Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get to the introduction. So again, hi everyone, welcome to our first workshop of the BDPA conference 2021. So this workshop is called Wearable Tech, the brain and why IT matters, and this is on our digital transformation and innovation track. So for those of you who it's your first BDPA conference, this year we do have three main workshop tracks: digital transformation and innovation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and increasing technical acumen. So over the course of today through Saturday, you'll have opportunity to join a number of different workshops, panel discussions. You already probably heard the keynote from Mr. Tim Coleman earlier today. So we have a lot in store for you all, and we are just so excited for everyone to be here, especially if it's your first BDPA conference. Welcome. This is my sixth BDPA conference, so have been around the block a couple of times, and of course, just my second virtual one. So just super excited to have you all here today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our workshop presenter today. So Lakeisha Greenwade is an award-winning Forbes leadership coach, technical founder, and Harvard University guest lecturer. Affectionately known as Coach L, she teaches ambitious entrepreneurs, experienced professionals, senior and mid-level managers how to push past their self-imposed limits, unleash their innovative spirit, and design the life of their dreams. As the founder of Wearable Tech Ventures, a 501c3, she is leading the charge to support 100 wearable startups by 2030, led by underrepresented founders. Originally from Akron, Ohio, she currently resides in Baltimore, Maryland. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lakeisha.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. I can tell you that I am fired up after attending the opening ceremonies and hearing the keynote, and it is truly an honor to be a part of the BDPA family today, especially, during my first annual national conference. I must give thanks to my Emerge sister, Chandria Seaton, for introducing me to the Indianapolis chapter, where I was able to share the notion of wearable tech, the brain and why it matters, as well as for the leadership there in Indianapolis and the national leadership. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And I know I won't disappoint, because many of the points that I'm going to make today echo what you have heard during our opening ceremony. So let me start with a question, and you can feel free to type in your particular question box, or if you have a chat that's open, you can engage. But I want to know right now, what are you thinking? Now, you may be saying, why is Lakeisha asking us that in a virtual setting? What am I thinking? Am I thinking about lunch? Am I thinking about what's next on the agenda? Am I thinking about how long I have to sit here, or do I need a stretch break? Well, let me tell you something. That question, what are you thinking, is soon to be a question of the past. And why do I say that? Because there is change that is about to occur. Now, many of you I know are pretty dedicated to staying abreast of what's happening, what are some of the new emergence technologies that are occurring, as well as studies. But privacy, what you may have heard, privacy is dead. Well, it's almost totally dead. And the reason I say that is because the brain and personal thoughts are the last piece of privacy left. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's in danger. It's in danger. So maybe some thoughts you may have about your spouse or your children, or somebody's getting on your nerves. Pretty soon they might be able to know what you're thinking, but it will work in your favor. If you're thinking great thoughts and thinking lovely things, then it will help the environment. So before I get more into privacy in the brain, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So basically, I grew up in corporate in the Midwest. Went to the Ohio State University, also went to graduate school in Maryland at Johns Hopkins University, as well as University of Maryland College Park. And I'm sitting here speaking to you today because I had an idea. And that idea was sparked from two different things. One, it was for a need for myself because I had some health challenges and I was trying to create a product that would make my life easier. But then also living in Baltimore, Maryland, the idea further extended itself due to the murder of Freddie Gray. So I'm sitting here today because that idea I acted on has now turned into the official global ecosystem for wearable technology. And today I am known as one of the very few wearable tech experts in the world. So how did this little girl from Akron, Ohio get to this place? Considering that I was not an engineer, although I studied with them. My background was in marketing, economics, and also with national account management in the corporate sector. How did I get to that point? To convincing at the time Beyonce's fashion director, Ty Hunter, to come to Baltimore and help me explore a concept of fashion tech and wearable technology. And how did that grow to a saying, we're going to support 100 startups by 2030 that are led by underrepresented founders? Well, let me tell you, it took a lot of guts. It took a lot of gumption. It took a lot of hearing from God, but then also knowing that there's a need that had to be fulfilled, as well as looking into the future and making sure that our people were not left behind. And as a result of being obedient to that voice and being very inquisitive, I've been honored to be recognized not only by the city of Baltimore as Innovator of the Year, but the state of Maryland as one of their women honorees that are under 40. And then also I've spoken at South by Southwest 3 different times and been a NASDAQ finalist for their startup community and have even shared my ideas at Harvard. So hopefully I've got your attention, and hopefully today I say something that will spark your interest, make you want to commit more to the movement as well as innovation. So I talk about this 100 startups by 2030. That sounds great, right? Now, we're in a space where in tech, we hear a lot about innovation, not only in the workplace, but also innovation from individual founders. And what we know with that underrepresented community, and especially with female founders who have that double whammy, and then you have founders that have the triple whammy based off of other communities, is that there's a lack of attention, a lack of investment. And so we're here to say, not only are we committed to growing this wearable technology ecosystem, which, by the way, is the fastest growing tech segment in the world, but we're going to make sure that we don't have that issue of diversity that has historically hindered our progress and our representation, because we're being intentional from the start by saying we want to make sure that we bring folks to the table that have been historically underrepresented, who tend to be the geniuses and the innovators, as we've seen during the pandemic. And as a result, we're going to create this new generation of innovators, a new generation of inventors and helping them get patents, but then also a new generation of investors. And that last piece is really bold, because we're not only looking at investors from the standpoint of a VC, which is important, but also looking at investors from the standpoint of our corporations, as well as developing a pipeline of angel investors. So you might be thinking, I don't know yet, but maybe in the future I'll know. Lakeisha, that's pretty bold. That's a robust type of work that you have there on your plate. Well, we're worth it, and I'll tell you why. Based off of the trends that we've seen, especially during the pandemic, wearable technology is on par for a valuation of $70 billion by 2025. Yes, $70 billion. So we're worth it. So in many cases, I get a lot of questions, and one of the main questions I get is, Lakeisha, what is wearable technology? What is it? And oftentimes, a lot of people, including myself, will point to my wrist. If you have a smartwatch or something that you use for a fitness activity, that in many cases, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But overall, when we look here on our screen, wearable technology is in the category of the Internet of Things. And basically, it provides data to help enhance productivity or a particular process. What I'm pleased to say is that we're an ecosystem that is complete with many of the innovators and inventors of devices such as tattoos on the skin, or business leaders that have helped to produce devices that we use every day, from wearables in our hearing, as well as on our phone, and apparel. So one common thing that people miss when we talk about wearable technology is that of health devices. And this is something that impacts especially communities of color when we consider diseases such as diseases that impact the kidneys. And we think about dialysis, that's wearable technology. When we think about diabetes, if you know of a type 1 diabetic, they use wearable technology if they have a pump. And then if you know anyone with any type of heart challenges or heart disease, and if they happen to have a defibrillator or a pacemaker, that's wearable technology too. So ultimately, wearable technology is a vast category that I'm so excited about because it touches so many different parts of business, health, and everyday living. So what's important to note is that wearables is a category that's transitioning into consumer technology. Now, historically, those that used it or were more engaged in the concept of wearable technology were scientists, such as you and myself, right? Scientists, as well as those that were doing a lot of research. But what we're seeing is that wearables are coming more to the mainstream, where mom and pop, daughter, son, friend, neighbor can go to any store or go online and purchase a wearable, whether they know it's a wearable or not. Also, what we know is that wearable technology is increasing its usage in many corporations on a daily basis, particularly from the standpoint of safety. In many manufacturing environments, what we'll find, if you see on that first picture, are employees that will utilize bodysuits that mimic what you see there on that screen. And more so is for protection of the spine, to also make sure that employees prevent injury as they're bending or lifting heavy loads. Now, we also know that there are robots used in conjunction with humans using these body armor suits. But as it increases, to make sure that we have humans doing more work, we will see more apparatuses at use, which are in the category of wearable tech. Now, also wearable tech has been driving the usage in the virtual reality category, as well as gaming. And we know that that particular segment is just going to go through the roof, especially with the number of youth that are engaged in gaming. And so we're so excited to be a part of some of those developments. We also know that wearable technology is used, and there are devices that are being created for our athletes in the NBA as well as the NFL. The NBA was highlighting a wearable device by a founder that has been growing, and it's the use of a ring. Parents and babies use wearable technology to monitor the children, and there are various socks and other things that are in usage now to make sure that the babies are being monitored. What's really cool is that there's that movie called The Black Panther. Have you ever heard of it? Well, I was super excited because when The Black Panther came out, I knew it was full of wearable technology, even if other people didn't know it. And I love that all of that innovation was coming out of the land of Wakanda and led by Princess Shuri. Well, let me tell you that that's only going to continue. And so, even though people are so enamored with superheroes and with the concept of not only the Black Panther, but even characters and Marvel characters such as Iron Man, and even some other movies and things that are coming out on digital platforms such as Netflix, where the future is being seen there. All of that is to get you comfortable, because we'll be using that on a daily basis. And I can't forget devices that we probably are using every day, such as Beats or other headphones and things of that nature. So again, those are just some examples of wearable technology that is readily available and accessible in the consumer technology category, whether for physical use or for entertainment. But then also there's some changes happening in the medical arena, especially as it relates to the brain and neural sensory monitoring. I'm hopeful that with additional research and with opportunities to hack the system in a good way, we'll be able to provide solutions in the future so that we can minimize the disparities associated with Black maternal health. Why would I say that? Well, with neurosensory monitoring, basically what that does, it will open the gateway so that when women indicate that they're in pain or that something's wrong, we have a wearable that will be able to support that notion and make sure that medical providers act more swiftly. There's also some new innovations happening with wearable neuroprosthetics. And basically, in the past, we've known prosthetics to look like plastic and not necessarily look like it's a part of the body. Whereas now there are prosthetics that are in the market and have been tested that actually communicate with the body, look a part of the body, and that are actually activated from signals in the brain. What are you thinking? Well, yes, the brain is going to be integral with a lot of these other developments that may have had some sort of medical use at the beginning that will transition to a consumer technology use that we can use mainstream every day. So right now, we're really just at the beginning. So during the pandemic, wearable technology shot through the roof. And particularly, this happened at many campuses and universities, as well as in many of the sports leagues, so that people can monitor themselves amongst one another. One, they can monitor their temperature. Two, they can monitor their distance from one another and make sure that they had some form of safety or a sense of safety. What we know, especially as we've seen many of the variants occur related to COVID-19, is that wearable technology, again, is going to be integral in that transformation from the old normal to the new normal. So let me get back to that original question. What are you thinking? Now, I hope I didn't scare you away by saying, you know what, in the future, we really are going to know what it is that you are thinking. Basically, in the development of wearable technology today, as well as with a number of agencies and platforms that are engaging in research, they're working on something called BCI. Basically, that is the brain-computer interface. So if you're a little bit older, and if you've ever seen a show called The Jetsons, basically that show was forecasting what some of the things that we'll be utilizing as well as engaging in the future, which happens to be today. So just to give you an indication, the picture I have on the screen is an example of BCI, brain-computer interface. And in many cases, you might have seen many other photos where devices are externally placed that helps to read brain waves. Well, let me tell you, just as there have been transitions with diabetes patients and with their pump that they would have, especially those type 1 diabetes patients, there are also many advances in play right now where the devices are so much smaller, and so that they can not only be placed on the body, but also integrated within the body. And so what are these devices? What are these enhancements for? It's going to definitely help read the brain activity and process data. And we see this in many cases with EEGs, and there's going to be, of course, a lot of convergence with human intelligence and AI, which will ultimately make us superhuman. Now, it sounds kind of neat that you could actually be the Black Panther, or you could be your favorite superhero. But there's also some challenges and things that we need to pay attention to, especially as leaders in tech, in innovation, so that we can make sure, as was mentioned during the keynote, that we minimize or eliminate that tech divide. And it really matters that we pay attention now. So I'm here today not only to tell you about the great things about wearable technology, not only to tell you about the cool products that are being produced, but also to create some awareness and ask you to get involved in the change that is happening with innovation. So wearables, of course, when we look at wearables and when we look at BCI, brain-computer interface, one of the largest institutions is the government and the DoD, where there's been a lot of studies and a lot of investment in understanding how can devices work, how can the brain work, how can there be some sort of integration. Now, there are some positives. We know that there can be some healing that takes place in the body. We also know that, of course, with everyone's emotions having been all over the place and being traumatized with some of the events due to the pandemic, wearables and BCI can definitely come to aid in the area of anxiety and depression. But it also is going to be used in that entertainment and that gaming. And of course, 5G is a game changer for the use of wearables, not only from the standpoint of interacting like we're doing in this virtual setting, but also I believe the future of conferences and concerts will definitely be changed, as well as movies. And of course, Facebook, who is also a data company, they've been utilizing and researching wearables and BCI use with audio and communication. And if you've been paying attention, there's been a launch of a number of different platforms to test some of those things in order for new devices and smaller devices such as wearable technology to come into play. So there are two individuals that have been instrumental with a lot of brain research outside of many of the major institutions. And that's Elon Musk as well as Bill Gates. Now, Elon Musk, of course, has been noted for his involvement in development with Neuralink and with the human trials. And it's kind of neat, but then it's also kind of scary if you think about it. When we think about data, who's going to own it and who's going to protect people in that particular arena? When we think about Bill Gates, a lot of his research has been more so focused on that of Alzheimer's. And so again, we know that that's another disease state that impacts a lot of the minority community or underrepresented communities. And so, yes, there's a plus, but then there's also a pause when we look at that research and then how it's going to impact communities of color. The last thing that we know, and I could share this, it's kind of getting into our other point of data and safety, is that of dreams. So if you're a person that's had a dream, perhaps you couldn't remember it or you didn't write it down, in the future, wearables and BCI are going to be very important with that particular state. And again, there are already TV shows and movies out there right now that are highlighting the facet of dreams, the facet of afterlife and current life. And basically, it's just utilizing some of those research and some of those devices that are already in play right now to introduce it to you so that it can be normalized. So here's the big question, and I'm sure everybody might have thought this at some point in time. In the future, I can say that with confidence versus saying might. Who will own the data? And this is a common challenge, especially when we refer to communities of color who in many cases do not have ownership of many of these technological advances that are coming to the marketplace, but we tend to be great users and facets of these technological advances, but then we don't own the data. So for instance, now when you go to many websites and try to shop, they'll ask you if you have permission for cookies, et cetera, et cetera. So there's permissions that are there. But in many cases, when we look at data, especially from wearable devices on your wrist, if you're just working out, or if you're using a device from a medical capacity, or some new innovations that are coming up for some of those other arenas that I've already mentioned, but even some arenas that I didn't mention, such as in gaming and real estate, and then outdoor activities, skiing, etc. Who is going to own your data? Also, your shopping data. Okay, so that's also a concern. And so what we know is that there is going to be a greater look at this particular facet in the future, especially by 2030, to ensure that there's some democracy around tech. Now, I can tell you for a fact that when we think about Congress, and because me being so close to Washington, D.C., right now, many of our leaders are thinking of tech overall. But there also needs to be a look at wearable technology and that data that is being collected and who owns it, how it's used, and also how it's being sold. And so we know that there's going to be a number of reforms in the future, and who knows, they might even be led by us to make sure that technology is doing more good versus bad. And it's also, you know, that concept of safety. Are you safe, right? So let me put it to you this way. Years ago, many of our homes did not have smart cameras or smart doorbells, right? But now many of the homes do. And so in many cases, you can upload that data, you can download it, but are you the only one with that data or those visuals? That's an example of what we're talking about, especially when it comes to wearables and and research and things that are done with the brain, because your personal safety, your personal data is basically gone. And so that's why overall, for all of us that are here at BDPA National Conference, we need to make sure that we take our seat at the table very seriously, because not only are we here to help eliminate the racial tech divide, but also it's important for us to speak up, create some awareness, and make sure that we're represented as these products are continuing to be developed, and make sure that the research is on par. What I can tell you, especially from the wearable technology field, is that far too many devices have been produced without having full integration of people of color. And as a result, it's caused many issues if you've gone through the airport and had to go through a scanner. Also, there's issues with correct readings because a lot of the devices have not been tested on folks that had melanin. And so I serve as an advocate within the wearable technology field, because a lot of these devices and new technological advances can be used for good, and they could definitely help our communities, but we have to make sure it works. We have to make sure there's correct readings, but then also make sure it's used for good. When we consider, again, the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that we've experienced throughout the pandemic and even prior, when we think about police cameras, right? That's wearable technology as well. The body cameras are wearable technology. So there's policy that we need to be involved in. Who has access to that data? Who or what are the rules for turning on those cameras and turning them off if that data or if those visuals are needed in a future case? So again, this is why it's important for all of us to make sure that we're paying attention and that we are speaking up and advocating for those that are not at the table or far away from it. And then again, there comes the case of equity and economics. Now, as I mentioned, the forecast for what the value of wearable technology can be in the future. We know that underrepresented groups are geniuses in many cases that are yet to be discovered. And it's important that we protect that genius in the right way, especially during the development processes with patents and with recognition, but more so importantly with the economics, so that that can be funneled back into the community for other recognition as well as innovative processes and products. So this is not the time to be overwhelmed. Okay, and I'm saying that not only from the wearable technology perspective, because we really have we have focus on us because we're, again, one of the fastest growing segments in tech, but also because there is a danger. So tech is good, but if it's not used for good, then we have stats such as you see right now. By 2045, it's predicted that 86% of Black and Hispanic American workers will be disqualified or unprepared for jobs. So if you recall, I shared a photo of how wearable technology is being used currently in the workplace. And in many cases, such as manufacturing sites, there are employees that may be working in car industries or maybe in supply chain that have those suits on that help assist the workers so that they prevent injury. But in many cases, those workers are also working right next to robots. So it's important for us to make sure that not only that we're at the table, that we're making room and that we're growing in leadership, but that also we are advocating for ways that tech as well as the data and research is used appropriately so that we do not leave people behind. And tech leadership matters, especially when we consider the C-suite. It is so important that, especially using these platforms and conferences such as BDPA, that professional development continues to be high on the list of priorities, and also that we advocate and mentor one another so that we can serve as leaders and role models to ensure that there is integrity in all places. So what's next? Well, hopefully I didn't scare you away talking about the brain and tech and data, etc. And many of you I know have heard some of the sentiments that I've already declared before. But 2021 to me and to Wearable Tech Ventures is the year of unveiling. So what we have done we've really focused on developing our ecosystem further. And that's with bringing together partners from corporations, bringing together partners from educational institutions, bringing together partners from the investment communities and youth, and just folks that are just really excited about tech. We've been bringing them together to educate, one, about the opportunities in wearable technology, and then we've also been incredibly focused on developing a pipeline of innovators. And so we've been working with colleges to identify college ambassadors, as well as with youth ambassadors that are in the middle and high school arenas. So what we started in May and what will go on through August are wearable workshops, where we talk about everything from wearable tech 101, what is that, to diversity in tech, to fitness wearables. And then also we have some workshops coming up talking about wearables and money. What does that really mean? So we look at that from the standpoint of not only the investment side, but also the side of data and blockchain, and even how that integrates with cryptocurrency, because yes, all of that is going to be mainstream. And so at Wearable Tech Ventures, we have partners in the form of advisors who serve on our board, as well as representatives from companies such as the Boeing Company, Qualcomm Technologies, Under Armour, and Bank of America, who serve on our Global Wearables Roundtable. And we're doing all of this not only just to say, hey, this is what wearables is, these are some products that are about to come on the market, but we're preparing a table where everybody can come and work on developing new products and ideas within the wearable tech arena. And so we invite you to join us for our Hackathon Partnership Weekend, which is going to be in September. Of course, it's virtual. And we will do a replay and give you the opportunity to commit to a role to help us to roll out this global wearables hackathon. And you can go to our website, wearabletechventures.org, to find out more information. And it's important that in this particular environment that there is activities such as volunteering, donating, advocating, and sponsoring. And we continue, or we have plans to continue to partner with BDPA, as well as other organizations within the tech arena, to make sure that we serve as those advocates, to make sure that we also serve as those informants, but those supporters from the tech field, but then also from our stance as the global leader in wearable technology and the founder of the ecosystem. So you are invited to join us. We're not saying that you have you don't have to leave one organization to go to the next. You can be a part of all of us in some sort of way. So we definitely invite you to work with us from the ecosystem development. We actually have some postdocs that are working with us right now on some research and data. We actually had some new volunteers that work for some different corporations and various school systems around the country that worked with us on our youth camps that were virtual. We had staff that were from Boston, also Atlanta, as well as Baltimore, that were working with us. And then with our Wearables Roundtable, we work with companies and representatives all around the country, including those that are our board advisors. And if you go to our website, you'll see more about them. And then also what's coming up with our Wearables Hackathon. So we have a growing team. And so I encourage you to go to www.wearabletechventures.org to see what we're doing, register, learn more about this particular field, and see all the cool things that are happening. And it's really neat to hear it from the company representatives themselves who are partnering with us. And if you're interested and want to learn more, want to participate as we are developing this ecosystem further, as well as some of our activities, you have open invitation to join us for the Global Wearables Roundtable. So with that being said, I'm excited to take questions from all of you. You can feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at either the wearabletechventures.org page, my personal webpage, or via our social media. And again, I do want to thank BDPA for being an amazing host and partners as we work to eliminate the tech divide, but also innovate and make sure we get paid and recognized in the process.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. I'm just like giving a round of applause here, because it was just literally so amazing listening to all of the kind of great information that you shared. So with
Thank
that, I do want to open it up for questions. Feel free to put your question in the chat or use the question and answer feature if you do have any questions.
And I see all the comments coming here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm pretty passionate about this particular field.
Oh, we could tell. We could tell for sure. Are there any questions?
And I can hang around if folks are a little shy or.
I'll give everybody just another minute to think about if they have any questions before we kind of go into our wrap up.
Oh, I see a question here.
Let's see. Okay, so here's a question. What challenges have you faced with the pandemic?
Well, I can tell you that I was developing a wearable product, and I am what you consider a non-technical founder, but someone that is highly inquisitive, but I know how to call for help, right? And so I knew I needed some engineers to help me with certain things. And with what I was developing, it was kind of cumbersome in a virtual setting to get that developed. So that was one thing that led to a delay. But as far as from a personal side during the pandemic, at first I welcomed the change of pace, although there have been challenges with not seeing family and witnessing multiple deaths. But I think more so it was that distance piece and learning how to not, associate with everyone so frequently, because I really am a social butterfly. But I can tell you that the pandemic has brought out the more of my introvert. So it's that redefining phase of who I am and what I'm going to do. But the other thing I can say is that there's been some opportunities that have come out of this. And so prior to the pandemic, we had launched a virtual wearable tech camp in the state of Maryland with University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And we extended that camp experience not only throughout the state of Maryland, but with other youth that were in Illinois as well as New Jersey. And so what we found is for those particular camps that we had that were focused on the underrepresented youth in high-risk areas, there were challenges with them engaging and learning how to code because in many cases they didn't have the proper materials. So it was that thing of safety and making sure that they had the materials so that they could move along faster and be on par with our other groups that had access. So it brought to mind there's still work to do. There's still innovation that can happen to make sure that if we have students that are in those high-risk areas that may not have the appropriate tool, there's got to be a way that we can make sure that they can be integrated with those coding processes and not feel left out.
Perfect. Thank you. We have some other questions coming in. So here's a question. What was the most difficult part about getting involved in wearable technologies?
That's a great question. The first thing was like getting people on the street to understand what I was saying. Because I would be talking a mile a minute and they would still be stuck at that question of, now what is wearable tech? What are you talking about, girl? But what helped was that, of course, having that celebrity presence and bringing Ty Hunter to Baltimore and working with some of the smaller businesses there where people are like, she's passionate about this. And by the way, I self-funded those initiatives. So I did not get funding until the Boeing company stepped in a couple of years ago. And just as of 2021, we brought in these other companies and organizations. So, and again, so when I talk about supporting underrepresented founders, it's not because I'm just saying it or something that I've read, but something that I've experienced as a Black woman with a lengthy and quality resume who still had challenges in this particular space.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I understand that. It's always challenges, especially not just as Black people, but as Black women. I feel that, heart to heart. So
yes. And really quickly, most recently, I've even had to correct organizations that were funded by the state as well as universities who copied my ideas and platforms without giving me credit.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's really ridiculous.
It's going to be in my new book.
As it could. Okay, we see it. So another question we have, if a student wants to get involved in wearable tech, where would you recommend they start?
That's a great question. So what we have are our summer camps, which of course they just ended, I believe, like 2 weeks ago. However, on our website, there is a place where youth can sign up to become a youth ambassador or learn more about that. And so if that date isn't correct right now, just go ahead and send us a message and we'll make sure we update that. But we're going to be hosting that meeting. We actually have now our lead youth ambassador, Jace Richardson. He was with me when I first started this organization back in the day. And he's going to help us with training our fellow youth ambassadors that are coming from the other states that I mentioned that participated in the camps. So definitely go to our website, sign up for that particular training, or send us a message that you're interested. And then just as another shameless plug, help support our youth ambassadors and our summer camp activities because they're launching a popcorn fundraiser next week. So if you want to be involved and jump in and have that youth learn some fundraising fundamentals by jumping in and developing a page, that's a quick way for them to fast track next week and to get started.
Perfect. We love it. So this is a question that's kind of related to that. What training is required to get involved in wearable technology?
Great question. So from the standpoint of joining our organization, I highly recommend that you just sign up for the wearables workshops that we're hosting through August. And again, we're going to do a super fest of that, if you will, in September, because what we found as a result of doing these workshops is that there's been an increased interest and people want to be engaged. And so originally the hackathon was going to be in September. So now we're changing it and saying, you know what, let's let that be our true engagement weekend. And we're redefining that date. So that's the standpoint from that training. But from an academic standpoint, I can tell you that I've had conversations with universities about developing certificate programs specifically for wearables, as well as helping to develop a true academic program from an undergraduate level. And having been a former university professor, I think I'm qualified to do that. So I'm excited about that. But in the interim, what we know is that many folks that have been engaged in wearables do come from a technical background, engineering, or fashion perspective, fashion design background. But ultimately what I say, wearables is not one where you have to be defined in one of those spaces. Again, being the example, my thing is if you have a willingness to learn, you're inquisitive, and if you have a solution to a particular problem, we could turn it into a wearable with our team.
Wow, absolutely. And then our last question, do you currently have any internship opportunities for community colleges in the Baltimore area that have excellent students?
I love it. We did actually have a couple that were unpaid last year. And so if there is someone that is interested in working with us in an internship capacity, please send us a message as well as with your resume. You can email us at hello@wearabletechventures.org. And all of our information, again, is on the website if you didn't catch that. But definitely, I'm always open to work with students that want to work hard. And I always tell them, like, it's an awesome opportunity to get in while we're still young and help us pave the way.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just give one more last call for questions. Is there anything else that anyone wants to ask Lakeisha before we wrap up? Okay, so I will echo what Misha says. Really, really great presentation. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Lakeisha, so much for presenting. We definitely learned some really cool things and just about your experience. It's been really kind of eye-opening to me, especially as I work with other like young entrepreneurs and young people who are trying to do different things in the tech world. So definitely we're super grateful to have you on behalf of BDPA. We definitely appreciate you giving your time, your effort, and thanking everybody for joining. So just to give everybody a couple things, a couple notes, after we wrap this up, we'll have our next set of sessions starting for the conference at 3 o'clock, where there will be 2 panel discussions happening. You can join an entrepreneurship panel, which would be great. Lakeisha just talked a little bit about some of those challenges. And then we also have our HBCU Hall of Excellence panel, where we'll have alum and professors at different HBCUs across the country kind of talking about their experiences and how HBCUs are really paving the way in technology. So with that being said, thank you everybody for joining. Hope you have a great rest of your day and hope you guys enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much.